Today I will be working in my workbook called The Story of Noah and His Family, which covers Genesis 6 through chapters 11, verse 26. We have already done chapter 1, Great Evil Brings Great Destruction, which is the prelude to Noah's Ark. A lot of the things that caused the evil that made God decide to bring the flood. Chapter 2, we hear about building the ark itself, the dimensions and all the instructions that Noah was going to get for the ark. And we realize that he had 100 years to build the ark. So now we're going to be in chapter 3, which is called the flood. So the flood, Genesis 7, 1 through 24. So the scripture says, Genesis 7, 1. The Lord then said to Noah, "Go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 pairs of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth." So what was the reason that God gave for Noah and his family to enter the ark? The reason that God gave was that you and your family, I have found you righteous in this generation. You can say that he found Noah righteous and he's saving the whole family because of that, or that he found the whole family righteous. More likely that he found Noah righteous, and by Noah's prayer across his family is also covered. But we don't know, whichever. This is the answer to the conditions of the covenant made with God and Noah in Genesis 6:18. Noah stayed righteous throughout the approximate 100 years it took to build the ark. Question 2. Now we have more definition about the animals. How many pairs of clean animals? And it says, take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal. And the reason why clean animals, there were so many more, was that those would be the ones to be sacrificed or eaten during the trip or whatever. But that's the reason why there were so many clean animals, that they would still end up with a pair once they arrived, or that there would be more to sacrifice. And then the unclean animals, since they wouldn't be sacrificed, they only need a pair on those. Now, the interesting thing about the birds is apparently he wanted more populace of the birds for some reason, because I don't know that the birds are clean enough to eat. So clean means these animals were on the list of animals that could be sacrificed or eaten. Interestingly, we as readers of the Bible will not even have this list until Leviticus or Deuteronomy. Yeah, the list of clean versus unclean animals don't even show up in the Bible until Leviticus or Deuteronomy. But the foods that could be given as sacrifice were known early as the story of Cain and Abel. Remember the types of sacrifice that Cain and Abel gave. So, how many of unclean animals would be taken? There would be 7 pairs of unclean animals. Now, some scriptures just say 7 of the unclean animals versus 7 pairs. It's a matter of interpretation if it meant 7 pairs or 14 or 7, which means an odd gender out. Since these animals could not be eaten, only 1 pair was needed to continue the species. Right, the unclean animals, there was only 1 pair that was taken, not 7, I'm sorry. It was 7 of clean animals. The scriptures continue. Genesis 7:4. 7 days from now, I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made. And Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him. How long were Noah, his family, and the animals going to be on the ark before the rain? 7 days. They're going to be on the ark for 7 days, settling in before the rain comes. Think how funny this must have looked to Noah's neighbors. You make a ship with no water nearby, you load it with all kinds of animals, many that are dangerous, and then you go inside and live as your new home? Just how crazy are you? Many would have teased him for how long he had waited on God. 100 years since God gave instructions, and now Noah goes inside the ark in anticipation of an event that the world would have thought impossible. How long will the rain be? The rain will be for 40 days and 40 nights. What did God say will happen to all the living creatures on the earth? He will wipe away from the face of the earth every living creature that he had made. Did Noah follow through with all God told him to do? Yes. Noah followed through with all that he had been commanded to do. Throughout the life of Noah, one thing we can see is that he waits on God for instruction and he does what God tells him to do. This will have been incredibly hard. He was a preacher of righteousness, according to Peter. So don't you think he would have tried in those 100 years to convert even one soul back to God? Yet not a soul changed other than his sons and their wives and his wife. Imagine the ridiculing when he cut down the lumber, when his family harvested every year, when he continued to build a massive ship. Remember, he did not know how long he would have had before the flood. How long would we have waited? Through a year, 3 years? I doubt any of us would have waited more than 5 years. Yet Noah and his family waited 100 years for God's plan to take place. So the scripture continues. Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters came on the earth, and Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives entered the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Pairs of clean and unclean animals, of birds, and of all the creatures that move along the ground, male and female, came to Noah and entered the ark as God had commanded Noah. So they came to Noah. He didn't have to search them down. They came to him. How old was Noah when the floods came? He was 600 years of age. Comparing this to Genesis 5:32 below, this is how we know that it took about 100 years to build the ark and be ready for the coming flood. We also have a confirmation of Shem's age, the second son born to Noah after the flood in Genesis 11:10. So let's look at those scriptures on the bottom here. Genesis 5:32, after Noah was 500 years old, he became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So 500 years old, and then 600 were building the ark. Genesis 11:10, 2 years after the flood, when Shem was 100 years old, he became a father. So how many people are on the ark? There'll be 8. What type of animal is not on the ark? Sea creatures, and things like that. Obviously, we know unicorns weren't on the ark because we don't have any unicorns. How are 8 people going to handle all those animals on the ark for an indefinite stay? This is a good question. And if you go to my Proving the Story of Noah's Ark, you have a little more information on that. But God would have had it made a way. We believe that the animals probably hibernated while they were on the ark because they'll be on the ark for quite a while. The scriptures continue. Genesis 7:10, and after the 7 days the flood waters came on the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, on that day all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened, and the rain fell on earth 40 days and 40 nights. We are now going to be able to calculate how long Noah, his family, and the animals were on the ark. What specific date is given for the start of the flood? In Noah's 600th year, on the 17th day of the second month. At this point, they've been on the ark for how long? 7 days. Where did the waters come from the earth? The flood, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of heavens were open. These would be like holes in the earth's crust, allowing water to escape from underneath. How are the waters from the heavens described? Floodgates of heaven were opened. This is actually very interesting. Due to the dramatic change in lifespan after the flood, Bible scholars believe that prior to the flood, the atmosphere had a very heavy water content, making the earth have a greenhouse effect. It also protected us from the radiation of the sun, which allowed man to live longer. How long was it to rain? It's going to rain 40 days and 40 nights. Scripture continues. On that very day, Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, together with his wife and the wives of his 3 sons, entered the ark. They had with them every wild animal according to its kind, all livestock according to their kinds, every creature that moves along the ground according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, everything with wings. Pairs of all creatures that have breath of life in them came to Noah and entered the ark. The animals going in were male and female of every living thing, as God had commanded Noah. Then the Lord shut him in. So Noah wasn't the one that closed the door. The Lord shut the door, which is also helpful because Noah didn't have to shut the door against other people who were starting to panic. It was the Lord that shut the door. So can you complete these? They had with them every wild animal according to its kind, all livestock according to their kinds, every creature that moves along the ground according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, with everything with wings. And then it goes, pairs of all creatures that have the breath of life in them. So number 2, we come to an opinion question. The breath of life means God breathed in them and that they breathe air. What animal is not on the ark and we know does not breathe air but water? Sea creatures. Sea creatures often breathe water. Now, there are certain animals in the water that breathe air, the whales and stuff, but somehow they would have been taken care of because they exist after the flood. Would this include dinosaurs if they existed at the time? If they existed at the time, yes, they would have been included on the ark. Now, my other, and I might even be talking about this here, but my other book also talks more about having dinosaurs on the ark. 2 creatures are listed in the scriptures below that survived the flood. They appear to be dinosaur types. They are, let's go ahead and read them. Behemoth, the land dinosaur. Job 40:15-18. Behold, Behemoth, which I have made as I made you. He eats grass like an ox. Behold, his strength is in his loins, and his power in the muscles of his belly. He makes his tail stiff like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are knit together. His bones are tubes of bronze, his limbs like bars of iron. And then we have the Leviathan, which is possibly a sea serpent. Isaiah 27:1. In that day, the Lord with his hard and great and strong sword will punish Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, Leviathan, the twisting serpent, and he will slay the dragon that is in the sea. So those are 2 creatures that survived the flood. Who shuts the door to the ark? God does. Notice that Noah did not have the responsibility of closing the door to the people left outside the ark that were going to drown. God made the decision to close the door. Will God eventually close the door to future believers? And we read Luke below. So Luke 13:24-25. Make every effort to enter through the narrow door, because many, I tell you, will try to enter and will not be able to. Once the owner of the house gets up and closes the door, you will stand outside knocking and pleading, "Sir, open the door for us." But he will not answer, "I don't know you or where you've come from." But he will answer, "I don't know you or where you come from." Similar to the ark on the door on the ark, isn't it? So we continue in our scripture. For 40 days, the flood kept coming on the earth, and as the waters increased, they lifted the ark high above the earth. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark flooded on the surface of the water. They rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 15 cubits. What did the flood waters eventually cover? All the highest mountains. How high over the mountains did the water go? It went over 15 cubits. And why it would go that high is if the ship went over the mountains, it wouldn't get caught. Was there anything at all higher than the floodwaters? No. If the waters were this high, could this flood be local rather than worldwide? It would have to be worldwide. I go into this in depth and proving the story of Noah's Ark. Now let's review a little bit. Looking back on the chapter on building the ark, is there a steering wheel? No, no steering wheel. Then who or what is steering the ark? It will be God who will steer the ark. Looking back on the chapter on building the ark, is there a window? Yes, there's a window. How rocky do you think the ark was on the waters? I would think it's going to be very rocky on the waters. The waters are in tumultuous seas, not very calm seas. So the scripture continues. Every living thing that moved on the land perished. Birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth and all mankind. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. The people and the animals and the creatures that moved along the ground and the birds were wiped from the earth. What were all the creatures that perished? Birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth and all mankind. And opinion question. If birds can fly, how would they have perished with the flood? Most birds can fly for a while, but if they cannot land on anything, then they have a problem. And the flood waters, as we will soon see, exist for quite a while, so much so that they cannot land on anything to survive. And of course, they don't have any food to eat either. Look again on page 2. Who of Noah's ancestors died in the flood? So let's look at page 2. We see the word flood here. And who died in the flood was Methuselah, Noah's grandfather. Okay. And let's see here. We're moving right along here. No, not that. Right there. Looking based on the graph on page 2, how many years after the creation was the flood? Okay, so let's look back on the graph. How many years was the flood? So the flood was when Methuselah died at 1656. So there was 1656 years after the creation that the flood happened. Okay, let's go back to that. Right here. Yep, right here. As the flood rose, do you think Noah and his family could hear the cries and screams of the people outside the ark? How do you think that made them feel? I'm sure they would have heard the cries and the knocks and the people trying to hang on and stuff, and it probably did not make them feel very good at all. Sometimes we can't help the people that are being hurt by God. But it was your choice, wasn't it? So finally, in this chapter, the last page of this chapter, Genesis 7:23, only Noah was left and those with him on the ark. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. So it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, but it flooded the earth for 150 days, which roughly, if it's a 30-day month, would be for 5 months. So now we come to the the crossword. Okay, so let me make sure I have the answers here, which I may not, but we'll see here. How many people were on the ark? It'd be 8. 8 people were on the ark. Oh, there it is. Good. Okay. The blank of the heavens were opened. The floodgates of the heavens were opened. Right. Okay. Number 8. Noah was 600 years old when he entered the ark. Number 9. The flood water covered the mountains to the depth of 30 or 15? Let's see, number 9. 15 cubits. 13. What sounds like a land dinosaur in the book of Job? That would be Behemoth. And 14. Pairs of all creatures that have the breath of life in them came to Noah. Number 14. Yes. So number 1 down. On that day, all the springs of the deep, great deep, burst forth. Number 2. What sea creature is mentioned in the book of Job? Leviathan. It's also in the book of Isaiah, but it's also in the book of Job. How many of the unclean animals were to go onto the ark? Number of unclean animals would be 2. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. Number 5. And 6. Noah did all the Lord commanded him, I believe. 6. All the Lord commanded him. Yeah, commanded. Very good. 10. How many days and nights did it rain? 40. 11. How many pairs of clean animals were to go onto the ark? 7. Noah's sons were Ham, Japheth, and Shem. That's the end of this lesson. I hope you had a great one. Thank you.